Good morning, and I hope that you're doing well. I know that this is in a very challenging time for all of us with all of the flight and road closures, a lot of the hazardous winter conditions throughout the country. So I just want to wish you the best in health and safety as you're dealing with this difficult time. That being said, I'd like to welcome you to COMM 330, Are You Listening? Which is an online class offered by me. You can call me Ben or Dr. Mann. I'm an assistant professor of communication here at Eastern Oregon University. I teach a lot of different classes focused on interpersonal communication, conflict management, health communication, and for this class, listening skills and the ways that we develop those. So I'm really looking forward to getting to know you all better and helping you to learn some of the ways that we can use listening. So each week I'll be uploading a video like this one that will provide some major pointers on the things to know for the week that will help you and supplement the readings that you will complete for that week. And I also want to use this video as a way to discuss some of the policies and things you should know about the course, including the ways that you'll be able to do well and what you should expect out of this course week to week. So I want to start with Canvas. So Canvas is the primary way that you'll be completing and keeping up with assignments in the course. On the front page of Canvas, I have a detailed calendar that allows us to understand and follow along basically the entire quarter. So if you check here on the front page of Canvas, you'll notice that I've populated a couple things for you. One of them is the course syllabus that I'll be going over in just a moment. And the other one is my Zoom office. So because this is an online class, I offer my office hours remotely. So my office hours are available if you click on that Zoom link to access the Zoom office. I'll be available for drop-in during my scheduled office hour times, but if those times don't work for you, then you're always welcome to set up a separate time to meet with me. For instance, if you'd like to talk about the course, maybe talk about a grade that you had on an assignment, an idea for a project, or something like that. So that way you can always get in touch with me. You can also reach out to me through email. So what I like to do for this course is offer a sort of schedule grid that shows you what you should expect for each week. So you'll notice that I've already gone ahead and populated the first couple weeks with the assignments. Over the course of this week, I'll be adding in content for later weeks as well if you decide that you want to work more quickly. So each week, you'll notice that there's a topic. For this class, I've centered the topics around different questions. For instance, what is listening? What does it mean to be a good listener? What does it mean for listening to be accessible? How do issues like race impact listening? So each week we'll be tackling a different question and using readings that help us to understand and break down that question too. You'll notice that for this week, I'm having you read a short section out of a textbook called Communication in the Real World that will help us to understand some of the fundamentals of listening. I'm also asking this week that you complete reading the syllabus that, again, I'll be going over in a moment that details some of the major policies for this course. By 11:59 p.m. this Sunday, I'll be having you complete an activity. Each week I'll be offering an activity that you'll be completing that essentially asks you to apply or use or discuss major concepts that we went over in the course. Each week I also offer a quiz. The quizzes are completely open note, open book. You have unlimited time to complete them, but once you choose to open it, keep that tab open so that you can make sure that you are able to complete that quiz. So one thing that I recommend is that you complete the readings in advance of doing the activity and quiz, or you come in having tabs or windows open to access the readings as you're working through the quiz. Either way, that helps you to follow along for the course. So you'll notice that each week follows a really similar pattern. There'll be a new topic, there'll be a reading assignment, and then there'll be an activity or quiz. On weeks where there's a major writing assignment due, such as an essay, you won't have a weekly activity, but you will still have a quiz. So that hopefully will make things a little bit easier and more streamlined for you. Every Monday will be the time that I upload a new video and provide some slides that go over content from that week and help you catch up with the course. And then Sunday, will be the day in any given week that your assignment is due. So in other words, this week's assignment, both the activity and the quiz, is not due until this Sunday. So the next thing that I'd like to go over is the syllabus. So the syllabus essentially goes over the major things that you need to know for the course. Think about it as an instruction manual that helps you to follow along. So I've gone over a few of the things to know already. Here's my email here, bwman@eou.edu. I do have an office phone, but it's easier to get in touch with me through email. My office hours this quarter are Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 10 to 10:40 a.m., 12 to 12:45 p.m., 2 to 3 p.m., and by appointment. In other words, you can use that Zoom office, and I will be in that Zoom room during those scheduled times. And if those times don't work for you, you can set up a different time to meet with me. And again, I have response to emails that I think is pretty quick, but do shoot me an email if you need to meet up. So this is an asynchronous course, which means that there is no requirement for you to attend Zoom meetings. It's not a remote course, but I do want to still provide some opportunities for you to get to know other students in the class a little bit better. I have a table of contents that can help make things easier to follow too. So this course, right, is designed to help us with building listening skills. So we'll understand the ways that we can listen both personally and professionally. We'll discuss how we're able to use and develop listening skills over time. We'll use communication theories and ideas to deal with issues of conflict and criticism. And we'll be talking about some of the ways that we can apply listening skills to professional situations, including the workplace, that help us to be better listeners and communicators. You should also know that this course covers the AEH, or Aesthetics and Humanities area. That's a general education category that will help you in completing your degree. Please seek accommodations if you need them. The sooner you get in touch with the Disability Services Office to have a formal accommodation, the better. I'm happy to support you in accommodations like extensions or additional support that you need, but I really recommend working through that office in a formal capacity. As I like to tell students, I'm not that kind of doctor. I'm not a specialist in mental and physical health. So it's a good opportunity for you if you reach out to the services office to have that formal accommodation. We will be talking through some kind of serious political and social discussions, right? You might not agree with every one of the readings or the ideas that are presented in class, and that's okay, right? College is an opportunity for us to learn, to grow, to think more critically, and to really hang on to what we gain out of these ideas in the class that stands out to us, that interests us, that makes us push back and challenges to think about why. So I really recommend coming into class with an open mind with that. Please check your email and Canvas regularly. If there's updates or changes, I'll be using Canvas announcements to let you know. Please don't plagiarize. There's some content here about dropping courses, and if you need to do that, ways that you can do that as well. My student hours are listed here. If you have a concern with me or about the course, then there is contact with me that you can do, or our communication department chair. So when it comes to work in the class and ways to succeed and do well, I think the best way that you could think about your success is that it's like a fire, right? If you find that you're falling behind in the class, like there's a fire starting in your home, you should call the fire department. You should get that fire taken out quickly. In other words, the sooner you reach out to me, if you're falling behind, you need help, or you have an issue, the sooner that I can help you put out the fire. If you wait and the fire has burned down the whole house, right, a firefighter can't really come in and help you by that point. So the sooner you reach out to me, the better, especially since we're on the quarter system and the courses are a lot shorter overall. It can be easy to fall behind without pacing yourself and finding time each week to focus. I really recommend working into your schedule or calendar a regular time that you're able to attend and complete assignments in the course. So written assignments, you'll be submitting to Canvas as a PDF, doc, or docx. For discussion assignments, you're just welcome to use regular text if you'd like to. If you have a need for an extension that is formal and you're able to document, I can do so. But otherwise, for unexcused assignments under normal circumstances, I deduct 5% for each day that that assignment is late. But there's one opportunity that helps. Congratulations, you have received a get out of jail free card. So in other words, you can turn in one assignment of your choice up to 1 week late with no grade penalty, no excuse, no need to give me an excuse or any reason why you missed that assignment. So you should choose carefully when to use that card. I recommend it as an emergency, like you're really falling behind and not able to finish a major essay or assignment. Just add on your assignment, use my card, and you'll be able to use your card for the quarter. But it will start to receive regular grade deductions if you're turning it in more than a week late. So that buys you a week of time. If it was due on Monday by midnight and you use the card, you can turn it in the following Monday by midnight with no concerns there and no impact on your grades. If you're on the border, like if you have an 89.9 and you've done a great job of completing assignments, then I'll bump you up to a higher grade. I recommend when you cite sources, which you'll need to do in text and through Works Cited for formal assignments, that you use the latest edition of APA. APA is used a lot in communication, and it's the citation style that I use the most. But if you feel strongly about using MLA or Chicago, you can do so. I recommend using the Purdue OWL, which is a great resource that provides a detailed citation checklist and things you can do to cite your sources. You might also consider using citation machines or citation makers that can help give you a starting point. They're incomplete oftentimes and might be the wrong font or format, so you'll need to reformat them, but they're not a bad place to start. You're welcome to send me rough drafts or outlines if you'd like. I'm happy to look at those, give you feedback ahead of time. The sooner you send it to me, though, the better. So we've talked about the weekly activities. Again, during most weeks, you'll be completing those for credit. Each week, there'll also be that quiz. Again, they're open note, open book. There is a listening assessment assignment, which this week I'll be uploading more details about, including some rubrics and guidelines. So the listening assessment essentially asks you to have a conversation with somebody else. Could be a casual conversation with a friend or family member, a phone call, and so on. You don't need to record or take notes on that conversation. But afterwards, you should summarize in your own words what was said by the other person. So again, this assignment is essentially a short writing activity due during the third week of class that asks you to look at a conversation and think about your own listening skills. There's going to be 2 essays in the course. Again, I'll be providing prompts for you where you get to choose a topic to write about from a few different options. These will effectively ask you to apply and use content from the course. They should be 4 pages, again, double spaced, standard font and margins, and use in-text citations in the Works Cited list. Since we'll have a lot of different readings and ideas that we'll be going over in the class, you'll have a lot to choose and draw from for these essays, but I still want to give you some good direction on those prompts too. In the final major assignment of the course due on March 13th, there'll be a debrief where you do essentially a similar thing to your first essay, but instead another conversation where you'll be able to reflect on your skills of listening that you've developed over the course of the quarter. And then lastly, I like to provide an extra credit opportunity. It'll be due on March 13th. And for extra credit, it'll add 20 points or 2% onto your final grade if you choose to do it. So that's a great buffer that oftentimes helps students who are on the bubble of getting the grade that they want. And then lastly, I've provided some updates about how to fulfill your general education outcomes through this course. So again, it provides the AEH credit if you're looking for that in order to complete your grade. So the final thing that I'd like to go over for today are some of the key ideas and things to know from this week. Again, this week's class gets at some of the ways that we choose to listen and communicate with one another. So I'd like to get rolling on that and help to guide and again, supplement your readings for this week. So we've gone over some of the major things to know about the course, including the syllabus, reading, and activity. For this week, your reading and your topic is about understanding what it means to listen. Why do we do it? Why do we choose to listen to other people? What are the different kinds of listening? What are they designed to be for? And what are 4 major types of listeners? You'll be thinking about what type of listener you are for this week's activity. So when we think about what listening is, it's easy for us to imagine just like a sound in our ear, right, of picking up on or hearing something being said. But hearing is only a small part of this larger issue. Listening has a lot of different parts. In fact, we can divide it into 5 major areas: receiving, interpreting, recalling, evaluating, and responding. And I'd like to break down each of those a little bit for you. Receiving is basically the process of hearing, right, or physically picking up on the information. It's the sounds vibrating in your ear. But we also listen to nonverbal communication. We use our eyes to pick up on if somebody's rolling their own eyes, if they're gesturing a lot, what they look like physically, and so on, right? So we are taking in the sounds, the vision, and all of those different parts. And that's that first step of getting that raw data together. The second step of listening is interpreting. Now that you have all of this data, how are you making sense of it? For instance, our brain interprets with eyesight the information that we have. When we actually get our vision initially, it's upside down, there's a bunch of dots and gaps there, and our brain actually fixes the information for us so that we can see clearly, and our vision is actually reflective of the world. So in that same way, interpreting is how we're taking that information in to understand it. If you see a stop sign coming up, you not only see that it's this red hexagon, but you interpret it as needing to stop, unless, of course, you live in California. Recalling is how you remember information for later. For instance, if you've ever used MapQuest, Google Maps, or anything similar to that, you might choose to find a route to a location, remember the route, including the places that you turn, and then commit that so that when you're driving, you know where to turn, you know where to go, and so on. So recalling is how you're able to take in that information, either in short-term memory, which is really quick and you forget it pretty quickly, or long-term memory, which is stored for, in many situations, forever. Evaluating is about making judgments about the information that you receive. So a really good example of this is if you're familiar with The Onion, it's a satirical news site, right, which posts a lot of fake news articles that are meant to make fun of society. There was one article posted in 2015 where it said that the US soothes an upset Netanyahu, the at time leader of the nation of Israel, with the shipment of ballistic missiles. There were a lot of people that actually thought that that was a real news headline and that actually happened. And The Onion had to clarify that this was satire. This wasn't real. It didn't actually happen. So that process, right, that headline, if it came from The Onion, is something we need to evaluate carefully, right? Evaluation is judging whether the message is credible, right? Can it be trusted? Is it worthwhile? And is it true? In this case, right, evaluating that a headline comes from The Onion, if you know that it's a satirical news site, means that it is not true. We deal with a lot of concerns in contemporary society about the credibility of information. We've seen a lot of discussion in recent years about fake news or about information that's just blatantly false. So evaluating is the steps that we take in order to determine if the information that we've received is true or false. And then lastly, we have responding, right? Responding is how we use our own messages to show that we understand. Oftentimes we'll respond through things like through giving verbal feedback, but there's also less formal ways that we can respond to. For instance, nodding our heads in agreement after hearing something we agree with, shaking our head if we're confused or disagree, are a lot of nonverbal ways that we choose to respond. So now that we've talked about sort of the major steps of listening, let's talk a little bit about why we do it. So there's a lot of different reasons why we listen. We try to understand and make sense of the world around us, right? Every day, there's so much information that we take in and try to make sense of. We use it to better understand other people. For instance, getting to know somebody, disclosing and sharing personal details to help us get to know each other better. To critically evaluate messages. Again, is that Onion headline real, or is the news that we're hearing every day accurate and credible? That's information we try to figure out. We monitor nonverbal signals. For instance, if somebody seems bored or they're rolling their eyes as we talk to them, we might realize and listen to that and change the topic. We use it to show that we care about other people. If we're listening, it really shows that we're giving people the time of day and that we're taking that effort in. Listening can be really challenging. And so showing that we care is a major way that we use listening effectively. We use listening to empathize with others, to try to put ourselves in other people's shoes. If you've ever heard or read To Kill a Mockingbird, Atticus Finch had that famous phrase, empathy is putting yourself in somebody else's shoes and walking around in them for a while. And lastly, we listen to create shared understanding. If somebody's talking about plans for next week and you're listening, the goal is that you both develop a plan of going out to eat the next week because you've listened and understood what it means to reach an agreement about that topic. So there are 4 major types of listening that we do. And we do these different types of listening a lot over the course of our lives and even day to day. In fact, in any given day, you have probably done at least all 4 of these types, or at least 3. The first major type of listening is called discriminative, right? So an example used in your reading for this week is the idea that, you hear a noise outside and so you go and look, or you go and scan a yard to see if your dog's out there and what they're up to, right? If it's like my dog, she's just covered in snow and rolling around and being silly. So we use it to take in our environment and understand what's going on. Informational listening is something like if you're in a lecture for a class, you're listening to the professor speak and talk about the material. You're trying to comprehend and figure out what that information is. Critical listening, again, is trying to evaluate a message and push back a little bit, try to understand if it's true or not. If you have read or watched the classic Pinocchio, right? His character is one where every time he tells a lie, his nose grows. So if he says, I'm a real boy, but his nose is growing, we're critically listening to him because we recognize that he's not telling the truth. In fact, we know it because of his nonverbal communication. And lastly, empathetic listening means that we're really trying to listen to understand how that other person is doing, to really have a heart-to-heart with somebody else. For instance, someone like a therapist is an empathetic listener who is really trying to understand how you're doing and the issues that you might be encountering in that moment. So again, we use all 4 of these different types of listening in a lot of different situations. The last thing that I want to go over for today are the different types of listeners. So for this week's activity, I'll be asking you to think about the type of listener that you are. So the major 4 types are people-oriented, action-oriented, content-oriented, and time-oriented. People-oriented listeners are more concerned with the person than they are with the message, right? Their greatest interest is the well-being and feeling that other people have. For instance, asking how somebody's doing, getting to know the other person, figuring out their interests are some of the classic signs of people-oriented listeners. In fact, at times, people-oriented listeners get off track because they're so interested in getting to know the person that maybe they lose track of the task itself. So these are folks that really care about other people. In fact, in more collectivist cultures, for instance, in many countries in Latin America and Asia, there's a focus on more people-oriented listening and pleasing groups of people. An action-oriented listener is somebody that often asks the question, well, what can I do? They really like getting their hands dirty. They like solving problems and addressing issues. So they're people that really see something that comes up and like to figure out the actions that they can take. Not everybody wants to listen or be listened to in order to solve a problem. Sometimes people just like to vent. But an action-oriented listener, again, is somebody who's really focused on developing solutions and a plan of attack. A content-oriented listener might be somebody that's really into complex math equations and problems, right? It's people who enjoy analyzing and making sense of the messages. So they're really into the message itself, what somebody is saying while we're listening to them. So content-oriented listener really likes that process of figuring out things like a puzzle. And lastly, time-oriented listeners are folks that might keep really detailed schedules, block out times for meetings with other people, and so on. They really are focused on figuring out and solving problems in a set period of time. For instance, it might be a boss that says, hey, we've got an hour. Let's talk about and let's solve this issue. It is really concerned with containing the goals of that conversation within that period of time. So as you're thinking about these and doing the reading for this week, you might think about which of these 4 strategies of listening is the most relatable to you. So I'll ask you to keep thinking about which of those 4 styles fits you for this week's activity. So to wrap up the major things for this week, we've talked a little bit about listening, why we do it, its goals, and so on. We've talked about its different functions and purposes. And then lastly, we've talked about the different types of listeners. And again, these are all skills that will be helpful for us as we build on some of the core ideas of listening from this week. As a couple reminders, please make sure that you're completing the first week's quiz by this Sunday that covers this reading for this week along with the syllabus. Please also make sure that you've completed the week 1 activity, which is also due on Sunday. Next week, so next Monday when I post the next video, we'll be talking about the steps necessary to be good at listening. What does it mean to be a good listener, and what are the barriers that can impact good listening too? So I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this video and learn a little bit about the class. Again, you're welcome to email me or get in touch with my office if you have any questions or would need any additional help. I'm really excited to get to know you better, and I really look forward to learning with you in this class. Thanks for taking it, and we will have our next video coming up soon.